Welcome back to Sci-Fi Book Trek. This week, our spoiler review of the Lloyd Biggle Jr. novel, Monument.
It starts with a ginger-haired mechanic who's called O'Brien, and he's great at fixing things. But then he realises, oh no, I'm dying, sitting here lying in a hammock under the sun. So he decides, I know what I'll do. I'll go to the next tribal village over and have a feast. So he has a feast, and then he talks to the elder and says, send me 50 children. He gets 50 children, and he starts teaching them all about the universe and the wonders of the galaxy, because we find out he's actually not from this planet. He's a crash land survivor from the Galactic Empire, as it were. But he knows one day a ship will land and the villagers will be exploited.
The white man will come.
So he tries to teach them everything he knows, which for an uneducated person is quite a lot, considering.
Yes.
But the students decide this all sounds like gibberish and they start drifting away. Eventually there's only a handful left. He says, right, forget my teachings. I'm just going to tell you what to do and how to do it in case a ship lands. And then he promptly dies. As he's dying, a ship lands. And so the students have to get together and follow the plan.
The plan.
The plan. Plans to a plan. To plan. The plan.
Plan is
Plan. And the plan.
these plans.
Plan.
Plans.
In the plan, like.
The greater good.
Yeah, exactly. So they capture everyone on the ship. Another ship comes. They capture everyone on that. Another ship comes. They capture everyone on that. Then a naval ship comes. And they go, right, we want to talk peace. Because they're not stupid. And, well, they get a signed treaty. They become an independent world.
Celebrate the independence of your nation by blowing up a small part of it.
But also, they get an ambassador.
Monsieur, où est Ferrero Rocher? You're really spoiling us.
Who just so happens to be a slightly politician type character, let's say. Politician businessman.
He's not allowed to go and swim in the ocean because he's so oily.
This goes on for a bit. The politician's happy playing ambassador because it's getting him some credit, but also all the ideas he has the natives reject because they don't want anything to change because they live in paradise. Why should they, have drainage canals and all sorts of stuff that just gets in the way? But the ambassador's niece comes along and to play hostess, thinking, oh, he's got a big luxury ambassador gig on a civilized planet. Turns up and it's just a beach. So she's depressed, but then spends the rest of the time sunbathing.
Be fair, it is a very nice beach.
Yes, but there lies the problem. Because the ambassador's getting tired of the natives turning down his request. And so his niece points out this would make a lovely resort and people would come all over from the world and stay here. And somehow the business politician who hasn't thought of this goes, oh, that's a great idea.
I'm glad I thought of it.
First he decides, I know, I will give the villagers a medical centre. This will help pave the way. When the villagers say, no, they don't want it, he says, well, you gain it anyway, because I know best. I'm civilised. Then eventually, he lands more resources to build a whole resort. The tribal villagers know they've got to stick to a plan. And so one of them gets on a ship to get the ultimate supreme weapon. A weapon that can decimate worlds, destroy billions of people's lives. It is called lawyers.
Can you imagine a world without lawyers? Oh.
And so, they lawyer up, not very effectively, because they're dealing with someone who knows the system and knows who to bribe. Which, it's a good job we don't have people like that. Anyway, eventually the military gets involved in trying to keep the peace.
The natives keep interfering with the work that's
Yes.
being done on the resort.
Peacefully trying to stop it by throwing themselves in front of bulldozers.
Mhm.
Very half a dent of them. But all this is to buy time. And we don't know exactly what's happening at this point. But we know the plan is in operation. It goes on for a bit. The politician businessman, he's so corrupt he gets his way, of course. He starts to plan large golf courses everywhere, all over this island, because he can apparently. And then the natives decide, no, we're going to join the Federation, as it were. We're going to take a vote and join the Federation as a planet. So then the politician doesn't have to be an ambassador anymore.
Suck on my chocolate salty balls.
And he can be expelled.
Diplomatic immunity.
It's just been revoked.
However, because he's got building rights for, golf courses and resorts all set up, technically he has right to carry on building and building whatever he wishes. As soon as they become a federation world.
That rat! Do something!
I wish I could, but he's got tenure.
So all looks lost. Everyone is in despair because the natives at this point are starting to starve, and a number of them pass away. But finally, and triumphantly, the leader of the natives walks in to the politician's house and says, "Here's your tax bill. Bye." The end. Right, so we'll go on to likes and dislikes.
I've already mentioned during the non-spoiler review that I like it's a new take on that Avatar, Dancer with Wolves idea, natives versus colonials, and the idea that the instinct of the natives is to lawyer up. They didn't even know what lawyers were before this guy, Langry,
O'Brien. Yeah.
Yes, O'Brien. Before he turns up, they have no idea what the lawyer is. And I still get the impression that they don't, even at the end of the book.
They know what to do, like what things to follow to get the result for the plan.
Shut it!
A section that particularly stood out to me, and it's when they're at the feast. And it's the whole thing of there are 3 chairs at the feast. You have 2 lower chairs and a high throne chair.
Yes.
And the 2 elders, or Langry and the elder, are sitting in the lower chairs, and that chair is clearly meant for someone of high status. And then you find out it's for the cook. And that just really...
Who prepares the best meal.
Yes, but that just really stood out to me as like oh, that's clever, that's really good. Because they are so dependent on how they prepare this native, I think it's a sea animal.
Yeah, it's a giant sea mammal of sorts, sort of like a plesiosaur, but with spikes and poisonous on their fins and stuff.
Yeah, and it has to be prepared in the same way that you might, well, not the same way, but similar to the idea of fugu chefs. That it has to be prepared in such a specific way in order to remove the poison, and the idea that the highest honour at a feast would be given to the cook, who can prepare it in such the best way.
Season it just right. Yeah.
Yes, and I like that idea, because when you're at a feast, the person of highest honour is the person that is the one that can prepare the food the best. I like that idea. I like that. I like that tradition. I think we should do that more.
Yeah, it is very fun and interesting.
That's fucking wrong!
I like the legal system.
Yeah.
That seems like a really weird thing to be pinned on, but like, I like the idea that you've got like these argument, counter arguments, and you're just feeding coins into a slot, and it's like, oh, I believe that argument counters that, and I believe that argument. It's an interesting way of seeing the legal system and seeing statuette precedent, like counter arguments. I like the idea that some of it's run in the background by AI and they're doing all the comparisons, so there's a little bit of impartiality that wouldn't necessarily come across from a human judge, but there's still a human judge running the proceedings to bring that element in. And I like
even though he's, being beamed in from somewhere else.
And the last thing that I want to say that I like, and it sounds corny as fuck, I'm not going to dispute that, the line, "We are already rich."
Yes.
It reminds me of that, the story with the fisherman and the rich, the fisherman and the millionaire.
Right, yeah.
What about you?
I like that there's not really, they're very sort of a villain. There's not a out-and-out moustache twirling villain.
Which is ironic, because I pictured Wembling as having a white moustache.
But even him, he doesn't want harm to come to the name. He's never going, he doesn't mind if the natives just, walk off a cliff. But he's not going to push them off a cliff himself.
No.
He's very much like, when a native does something, it's like, oh God, no, we've got to, don't hurt him. I mean, mostly so it doesn't break any rules and he doesn't get in trouble.
Yes.
But it's still, it feels like you could have easily made that character a monster. Like someone who does stuff in the shadows and, gives them blankets with smallpox on,
yes,
and stuff like that.
I would say he's quite a capitalist in
that. Very much so.
Yeah. He likes his modernisation, he likes his modern frills, and he wants to bring that to these uncivilised people.
Yeah.
And he does get frustrated that every time he tries to do something, he's
told no.
Yeah. We don't need that.
Drat you! Drat, and drat!
I mean, have you any dislikes about it?
It's difficult to really coalesce a dislike as...
Yeah.
There's a reason for it in the narrative. The idea that they would be so against the idea of a medical centre. And I know why they are against the idea of a medical centre.
Yeah.
It's because it's a slippery slope
but
argument.
But that's the thing, at that point, some of them are not against it.
Yes, and that's...
Some of them are for it, because it's a medical centre.
And that's
it will help.
I think I'm coming up with reasons to...
I mean, for me, I'll go on to, some of the things I dislike. Some of the characters seem to blip in and out of existence when needed.
Yes.
They'll be part of the story, and you think, right, they've become almost a main character, and then, boom, they'll be just gone.
That does happen
for whole, chapters.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with you on that.
I mean, that's one of the, I would say, points I disliked about it, but it's not a strong dislike.
One of the notes that I have, and it seems silly, but I feel like the love story between the two human characters didn't need to be there.
Yeah, it does feel a bit forced at times.
Yeah. I would have much rather been interested in the characters of Forney and Darla and their story, which completely goes by the wayside, to be perfectly honest. Because they do seem like... Well, Forney he's pretty much the main character for most of the thing, even though it's not entirely told with his perspective in mind. His interactions with Darla, and the fact that they have arguments, they have fights, especially after the death of of her sister.
Yeah, but that's the thing, you don't really know they've had fights. All you have is Holt just going, oh, well, they seem to be spending time apart.
Yeah.
And, like, you've got to infer what's happening rather than have any real understanding from their perspectives what's happening.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The fact that it is then told from Holt's perspective.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit annoying when
it's always from sort of an outsider's point of view.
Yeah.
As well. So,
and
I mean, apart from, like, the opening bits with O'Brien to set it up.
I mean, technically, he is an outsider.
Yes.
But in that same way, he is part of the tribe by that point, so not an outsider's perspective.
Wonderful. We are now a part of the tribe.
But then again, I mean, to look at it from a different perspective, maybe that is why this is a better take on this, because you've got the tropes, but we don't have to necessarily explore into them, because you know that character is that type, that character is this type.
So, shall we go on to nitpicks?
I have one nitpick, and unfortunately it is a complete plot. You know,
Yeah, I think maybe I might have the same nitpick, but I've also got a few others.
The plan.
Yeah. Well, it's not just the plan, it's O'Brien's knowledge. My main nitpick is O'Brien knows way too much and it's never explained. Not even like a little, oh, there's books or anything anywhere. It's just, no, it's just...
Yeah.
And the plan happens almost exactly.
Yes.
I mean, like, there might be small caveats in the plan, like, if this happens, do this, if this... Because that's the impression I got from it.
Perhaps. But they are also a people with...
But, like, for instance, the only one wrong thing he gets is you have to be 90% literate for, like, the planet.
And it turns out it's 60%.
Yeah.
Yes. So they could have done it earlier, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. It's... Could have just been a case of that back in O'Brien's time, it was 90% and the rules have changed.
But, like, is that your nitpick? Would you say?
It's... I think the plan is too perfect that...
Yeah.
And I mean, certainly, like you say, there are people with oral history. There's no... Before he turns up, there are no people that are making notes. There are no people that have... They've got no means of storing information. They talk to one another.
Well, that's how all the plans registered, because one tribal student, he's, like, remembers everything he is.
Oh, yeah.
Essentially.
But that's the thing. I mean, I know the author himself on his Wikipedia page is described as an oral historian. So it's not that it couldn't happen. And the fact that this guy has such good
memory recall.
Memory recall. He's got such good recall, being able to remember, right, names,
stuff
dates.
he doesn't understand.
Yes. Like, these are the names. What are the names of the lawyers? And the guy wakes himself out of sleep to then recount this list of lawyers. But the idea, like you say, the idea that O'Brien has made this plan so perfect, it does stretch credibility. It's...
Yeah.
Even if you got like, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. Like a flowchart system of potentials and possibilities. It still plans out far too much to the letter of what happens.
But anyway, my other nitpicks were, one, where are all the adults? Because, what is it, the kid is his great-great-grandson.
Yes.
Where are all the generations in between? I mean, maybe they all get killed by poison, or maybe, the natives don't live that long compared to O'Brien. But,
no, I do think they actually live quite a considerable time.
Well, yeah, it's just where are all the people in between Horny and O'Brien? Because you've got one person, which is the elder, and he's not even in that lineage. So that felt a bit odd. But anyway.
Perhaps it's because they don't factor really into the story. I mean, it does seem like a very young group of... It does seem like
because they've been taught, they know the plan. That's why they've been given the command.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been the elder in charge.
Maybe. It's a bit of an interesting political system as well, actually having the young people making the progress.
Well, yeah, but it's also just following what an elder has said.
That is true.
But yeah, anyway, the only other thing was, when O'Brien first gets down, he says he, killed this species of bird.
Yeah, the pterodactyl looking thing.
But Holt and Talia are walking through the forest at one point, and they see, seems like the same bird described, in a pool having a bath or something, or just drinking some water. Flies off and sprinkles them with water. So it's like, well, is that the same species? Because he killed them quite so many years ago, so he's a long-lived species, and that's the last one left. Or is there a breeding stock? And if so, why haven't they repopulated?
I mean, they aren't...
That was my only odd thing, because the only time flying creatures are mentioned is that one scene, and also O'Brien saying he exterminated these creatures. Anyway, I think that's it for nitpicks.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
I can't say any fairer than what I've already said in the non-spoilers. It's a good book. I'd like to read it. I don't know whether I'd be reading it again quite so soon, but I think it would be one that I would come back to, certainly. And I think it's got a lot of value. I think, considering I'd never heard of it before we decided to do the review on it, I think it's a gem that has been sort of hiding out, has possibly been missed as a story that really needs to be seen. And I would consider that highly recommended. I think certainly if people are getting bored of the idea of the Avatar Dances with Wolves, I know I keep coming back to this
But yeah, the problem is, I think if this was done and brought into the light of public attention, people would say, oh well, it's just like an Avatar.
Perhaps. It's a different take on that type of story.
Yes. It's I would say, more interesting take.
But I think it's definitely been written with some thought, and there are messages and themes that start to appear the longer that you analyse it. The idea that every single plant, or rather when Thalia's walking through the flowers, and there's an underlying message of humanity is toxic to this place.
Yeah.
And it's not even thrown at you as this sort of message.
It's just this underlying thing.
Underlying. And it's beautiful in a way that he's done that without just going, I have to make this so that you can understand it. It's like, you get that after you finish the story, and then suddenly made this realization of, oh wow, that was hidden in plain sight. Yeah. It's clever. and I think it deserves more appreciation. Certainly deserves to be, seen more and in more public eye. I think this is a good story.
Yeah. I mean, like, I agree with you. I think it should be read by more people. It is at least worth a read. I think at some point I would go back and read it again. It is highly enjoyable. And like I said, I just think it is very good.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right
then. So, I think that ends our talk.
Where do we
Next
go
week.
from here? It's a big one.
So he says to all ladies.
Warhammer, The First Heretic by Aaron Dembski Bowden.
Glad you said that.
I hope I got that name right. First time into the Warhammer Horus Heresy stuff. Should be an interesting one.
Lovely. So, join us next week for that. Bye.
Bye. Oh, what's the name?
Telia.
Telly.
Ifia.
Tilithia.
Tally.
Tally. Yeah, that'll work.